In tonight's news edition, thousands of Jordanians marched to protest the publication of anti-Islamic cartoons. The International Criminal Court opens a preliminary inquiry into possible war crimes in the Palestinian territories. And the US President and the British Prime Minister pledged to stand behind anti-terrorism efforts. You're watching Jordan TV. Very warm welcome to the news. Thousands of Jordanians took to the streets in protest against Charlie Hebdo's publishing of cartoons insulting the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The rally, organized by grassroots movements and representatives of political parties, set off from Al-Husayni Mosque after Friday prayers. The protesters held placards and chanted slogans condemning the new edition of the French magazine. They said that freedom of expression does not justify insulting religious symbols and faiths. Also here at home, thousands of Christian pilgrims prayed for peace and stability in the region during the Epiphany celebration at the baptism site. Latin Patriarch of Holy Land and Jordan, Father Fuad Twal, led the Epiphany Mass at the Latin Patriarchate Church, the Church of Jesus Christ Baptism. Minister of Tourism and Antiquities Nidal Qatamin and a large number of Christian religious figures also attended the celebration. Thousands of Christian pilgrims from around the world annually mark Epiphany at the baptism site, where Jesus Christ was baptized by John the Baptist. Prosecutors at the International Criminal Court, ICC, in The Hague said they had opened a preliminary inquiry into possible war crimes in the Palestinian territories. If that led to a full investigation, charges could be brought against officials on either the Israeli or Palestinian side of the conflict. On January the 1st, a day before requesting ICC membership, the Palestinian government asked the prosecutors to investigate alleged crimes committed on its territory since June 13, 2014, the date on which Israel began its latest offensive in the Gaza Strip. A preliminary examination, which could take many years, involves prosecutors assessing the strength of evidence of alleged crimes, whether the court has jurisdiction, and how the interest of justice would best be served. An initial inquiry could lead to war crimes charges against Israel, whether relating to last conflict in Gaza or Israel's 47-year-long occupation of the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. It also exposes the Palestinians to prosecution, possibly for rocket attacks by militant groups operating out of Gaza. Palestinian ambassador to the United Nations, Riyad Mansour, told members of the Security Council that it's time to focus on putting an end to the situation.
Implementing of the law and ensuring responsibility of the gross human rights violations, breaches of humanitarian law, and war crimes that have been perpetrated, and not punitive measures to exact retribution for a commitment to international law. The focus must be on ending this illegitimate, belligerent, colonial Israeli occupation in all its manifestations and realizing the international consensus for a peaceful solution. We will thus continue to reject all of the irrational arguments against our peaceful, non-violent, political, diplomatic, and legal endeavors, and will continue on this path for justice and peace.
US President Barack Obama said the United States stands with all partners dealing with the scourge of terrorism and will do all it can to help France seek justice after the deadly Paris attacks. In a wide-ranging news conference with British Prime Minister David Cameron, Obama said he did not consider violent extremism an existential threat, and he's confident it can be defeated.
Now, much of our discussion obviously focused on the continuing threat of terrorism. And in the wake of the vicious attacks in Paris, as well as the news surfacing out of Belgium today, we continue to stand unequivocally, not only with our French friends and allies, but with also all of our partners who are dealing with this scourge. I know David joins me when I say that we will continue to do everything in our power to help France seek the justice that is needed, and that all our countries are working together seamlessly to prevent attacks and to defeat these terrorist networks.
U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry offered his condolences to France for the deaths of last week's attacks that killed 17 people in Paris. Kerry's visit came after the United States failed to send a top official to attend the march in Paris. Here's more on the visit.
Bearing flowers and his fluent French, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry pays his respects to France. The chief U.S. diplomat laid a wreath of white lilies and red roses outside the offices of Charlie Hebdo in Paris. His visit comes after the U.S. failed to send a top official to march alongside world leaders at a massive Sunday rally to honor the 17 victims killed in last week's Paris attacks. The decision led to domestic criticism at home and a rare admission from the White House that it had made a mistake. French President François Hollande greeted Kerry. Aides say the visit isn't about making amends. It's about showing U.S. solidarity with Washington's oldest ally.
Aucune nation ne sait mieux que la France.
No nation knows better than France that freedom has a price, because France is at the origin of so many revolutions of the human mind, including our own. Your commitment to freedom and to freedom of speech is an inspiration for the world.
Est une inspiration pour le monde.
As if to cement the good feelings between the U.S. and France, American musician James Taylor was enlisted to sing the popular ballad, You've Got a Friend.
Belgium raises its national security level to 3 on a 4-point scale. The announcement came after police raided several locations across the country against an Islamist group suspected to be planning attacks. 2 men who opened fire were killed. Belgium is the latest country to raise its security alert after France, who has lifted it to its highest level after gunmen killed 17 people in Paris. Authorities say there are no links between the 2 Islamist groups.
We are not aware of any specific or concrete threats. However, in the situation we can consider that it is useful to raise the level of prudence and vigilance. That concretely means that complementary measures of protection and security will be taken, for which evident reasons we are not going to communicate.
U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry met his Iranian counterpart Mohammad Javad Zarif in Paris to try to narrow gaps over Iran's nuclear program. Zarif and Kerry met to follow up on a lengthy meeting next Wednesday in Geneva in search of an accord seen as crucial to reducing the risk of a wider Middle East war. French Foreign Minister Laurent Fabius also met with his Iranian counterpart on Iran's nuclear policy. Iran and 6 world powers renewed their quest for an elusive nuclear deal after negotiators failed for the second time in last November to meet a self-imposed deadline. The new deadline for a long-term agreement is June the 30th. In a joint news conference at the White House, U.S. President Barack Obama and British Prime Minister David Cameron also pushed back against calls for further sanctions on Iran now over its nuclear program, saying such action could harm ongoing negotiations.
We remain absolutely committed to ensuring that Iran cannot develop a nuclear weapon. The best way to achieve that now is to create the space for negotiations to succeed. We should not impose further sanctions now. That would be counterproductive, and it could put at risk the valuable international unity that has been so crucial to our approach.
Okay, let's take you to New York, where an Italian artist is doing some amazing body painting in unique forms, and his canvas is the human hand. Guido Danielli only uses makeup, no paint, to produce vibrantly detailed, lifelike animals such as zebras, elephants, reptiles and birds. His works are now displayed at the Handimals exhibition, featuring about 24 large-scale photographs. The Italian artist says his art is a way of calling attention to endangered animals.
Tecnici, per cui era impossibile.
Beautiful.
We begin with tennis. Petra Kvitova downed fellow Czech Karolina Pliskova 7-6, 7-6 to win the Sydney International title. Kvitova will take a big confidence boost into next week's Australian Open, where she reached the semi-finals 3 years ago and will face a qualifier in the first round. Few, however, will fancy facing world number 22 Pliskova at Melbourne Park in the form she has displayed this week at the Olympic Tennis Centre, especially in her semi-final humbling of 5th seed Angelique Kerber.
Set a match, Kvitova. 2 sets to love. 7-6, 7-6.
Chelsea manager Jose Mourinho said that the Premier League leaders Chelsea aren't planning on doing business during the January transfer window. At a press conference, the Portuguese coach said he was happy with his squad and had no plans to buy defensive reinforcements despite his back four being carved apart in a 5-3 defeat at local rivals Tottenham Hotspur 2 weeks ago. Title rivals Manchester City have already added to their squad with the signing of Ivory Coast striker Wilfried Bony from Swansea for a reported £30 million.
And if in this moment instead of...
Finally, a look at the weather forecast. Cold tonight with scattered showers forecast for many areas, while winds will be southwesterly and moderate, picking up at times. Thundery showers are also expected tomorrow across many regions. Winds will continue to be southwesterly brisk. The Jordan Valley should enjoy fair weather, rather warm across the southernmost parts of the valley. Temperatures at the Dead Sea are expected to reach 23 or 24 degrees. Further south, a chilly night in Aqaba and pleasant weather tomorrow. Winds there will be northerly brisk and the sea slightly choppy. Next are the lows and highs for tonight and tomorrow. To end the news, our top stories once again. Thousands of Jordanians marched to protest the publication of anti-Islamic cartoons. The International Criminal Court opens a preliminary inquiry into possible war crimes in the Palestinian territories. And the US President and the British Prime Minister pledged to stand behind anti-terrorism efforts. And that's the end of tonight's news. My name is Raad Liptouche. Thank you so much for your company.